I found it was really helpful in terms of practical applications for how to scale exercises for people with pelvic floor dysfunction, and rather than just completely limiting them from ever returning to certain activities. So that was my favorite part. And then the next favorite part was actually lifting something heavy. I definitely will not be as afraid of pushing people, because I think the even safe exercises are not always safe for patients, and they could actually do something heavier they do throughout their daily life and have less pain with that than some of the preconceived safe exercises. I would have to say this is the first pain neuroscience course, and even though that's not necessarily how it was marketed, it's the first course that I've taken that I feel like I have really concrete things to say and help people with.
Fantastic.
I feel like it really brought together a lot of concepts for me.
I thought it was absolutely amazing. It definitely exceeded actually every expectation I thought about when I was coming into here. You hear pelvic floor and you definitely think one thing, but then when you hear pelvic floor, strength conditioning and movement analysis and physical therapy, everything blended together just absolutely built a picture that I have not seen before.
On Monday morning?
Monday morning, I'm going to stop touching all my patients. I'm actually going to just see what works with them from a pure movement and exercise standpoint, and really challenge myself and my clinical reasoning skills to stay with that and make some improvements there. And if stuff doesn't work, then we could always regress back to manual techniques. I would say 100% yes, you have to give it a go. I'm going to tell this to all my coaches and strength conditioning coaches that I know back at my CrossFit gym, and try and get them out here to learn from you. So we started warming up and I got up to about 405, and which is relatively heavy. My one rep max is 475. Was instructed on all the pelvic floor cueing techniques and the breathing and the bracing and spreading the tension and all that. It felt pretty heavy going into it, but then once you gave me that cue to kind of shut my brain off after getting all the neural pathways firing, went and picked up 405 like it was a feather. So
Fantastic.
can't explain it any other way.
Love the look on your face at the time.
Oh yeah, I was totally surprised. I had to sit down and think about it for a little bit. I was like, that just happened? Yeah, it did.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Matt.
You're welcome. Thank
Cheers.
you.
So the first time, it was very mind-blowing. Every single minute, it was a new technique, a new concept I've never considered before. And I was so overwhelmed with all the new things that I was learning. I really had to take the time to absorb them before I could think more critically of the topics. And now that I've gone into my practice and I've changed the way I've done things, and I use the techniques that I learned here the first time, I am able to come to the course the second time and really think more in depth about the things and the topics that we discussed. And now the patients that I was struggling with before and how to really handle them using the techniques that you taught us, this weekend really gave me more options to choose from. And I think that's because I was already exposed to the information once and I heard all these great things before, and now I can scale that back to the patients that I was struggling with previously.
What would you say to them?
I would say definitely entertain at the idea of doing it again. It's well worth the money, and because it's a lot like CrossFit, you're always going to see something different, you're always going to hear something different. And I think the people in the class change a lot too. So one class was both classes were very conservative, but one class was more open to the idea of not being conservative, whereas the other class was very closed. I don't want to say closed-minded, but they were just so mind-blown and so unwilling to go outside the box that I feel like the class where it was more open-minded, we got to hear a lot of different point of views, and we got to maybe even progress a little bit farther than like the other things, because they were just more open to it. And like the environment changes, the people change, the time of year, like everything about it can be different. And like I said, you think more in depth about these concepts, you come back and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this patient could do that, let me ask him about this now. So give yourself some time to absorb the information and come back with a different attitude towards it.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
Lovely to see you again.
Yes, thanks you.
Bye.
It was fantastic. I learned so many new techniques and things that I'm really excited to take them back to the clinic.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely going to start using our new TA queuing like tomorrow. And I'm excited to start working with more athletes hopefully in the future because haven't had much of a chance so far. And when I do work with them, I always tell them they know more than I do. So now I feel a little bit more on their level.
Excellent.
And I'm no longer afraid of breath holding. So
Fantastic.
No, so yeah, it's exciting. I'm going to use the trigger to trigger the whole pelvic brace type of thing because it's so many cues that patients get overwhelmed. So having that trigger, it's going to be amazing.
Exactly. Same here. Absolutely. Well, I've been working my way back up for a long time, but my max was like 155 before. And I've been at 145 for a while, and today I did 205, so
Holy
it was
moly.
a good day.
And I lifted 105 for the first time in my life. So
Well done.
pretty good.
Well done. That's fantastic. I didn't realize the jump was that big.
It was a big jump. I'm so stoked. I'm still on adrenaline right now. It's amazing.
Wow.
So I can't wait to show off.
Yeah, definitely.
100%. Don't be afraid to move. Don't be afraid to come here and learn how to do it.
Amazing. Excellent. It really wasn't like I didn't know what to expect when coming here, and I got so much more than I could have ever imagined. Really, what I got out of it was understanding a methodology for helping. In our case, we work with moms, postnatal women, and it really helped me understand a methodology to help them go further in their fitness than I thought was possible. So I'm very thankful.
Yep, mind blowing. Like you really opened my mind to just different methods, different things. Like I was so stuck in what I thought was right, but for you to be able to prove me in real life people was really amazing for me to see. So I'm excited to be able to bring that to the people I work with.
Excellent.
And being able to trust your gut, like trust that you can overstep what the perceived expectations of what a mom should be doing, and knowing that you can push the limits more than you realize.
Yeah. And hopefully in a safe way, right? In a safe, systematic way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Because we don't teach reckless here.
For me, I think going home tomorrow, some of the testing and helping women actually feel their pelvic floor muscles, their transverse muscles, and I now feel like I am empowered with a methodology to help them actually feel the muscles in the way that they're supposed to feel them, not over activating them, but activating them in just the right way.
Cool.
Simplifying the cueing method.
Yeah.
So not overcomplicating it, so you're focusing on one thing and being able to perform it.
Cool.
For me, it's going to be not making the people that I work with stop what they're doing and take them back and just continue to take them wherever they're at and then just teach them the right way to do it. Yeah, again, it was mind-blowing. You know, I have a diastasis myself. You had me on the table. I was crunching, doming, but then with the method you taught us, I was able to crunch and spread the load and with no doming. So again, proof right here in my own body that it is possible. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So
Sign
worth
up.
it.
Like my mind is blown, I learned a lot. I have a lot to take back going to see my patients in the future. We do so much manual soft tissue and stretching, trying to do them, start them out with exercise, not like, okay, we're gonna loosen everything up, do some soft tissue, and then do exercises. Trying the exercises first, modifying them to where they are, and going forward, not starting with soft tissue. Do it, for sure. I've never done CrossFit before, so for me it was a lot of learning as far as CrossFit stuff, but also understanding how to do those things for patients that can't do very much either, very low grade, kind of putting the two together. And I'm very interested in women's health and doing that, and as a female myself, just combining all the parts together, it's great. And Anthony is really funny, so it makes it interesting. It's not the usual CEUs that we get.
Awesome.
It's much more interesting. It's a physical therapist.
Thank you very much.
Well, I never have deadlifted a huge amount. I usually do like 3 sets of 50 pounds, and Anthony told me that I would lift 200 pounds deadlift, and I did. At the end, did all the cueing, and it didn't hurt. I could do it a couple times. Still got some work, but I'd never done that before.
Yeah, and it wasn't just 200, it was 205.
205.
Right?
That's right.
Awesome.
It was great. I'm a almost PT. I am 3 months away from graduating and hoping to specialize in women's health, and have been through my own issues with incontinence and pelvic pain, and
really great tips and cues, and I also am a CrossFitter, or have been, and not as much recently, but kind of due to some back pain. So, but I lifted a lot heavier than I have in over a year. So that was pretty cool, and kind of get over some fear that I've had as well. I think one thing is just get out there and do the movements, but not be afraid of it, and that everything has a modification. Even though I know that in the back of my head, I haven't been applying it to myself, and do the things that I want to do and have loved doing and missed doing for sure. Absolutely do it. And I love continuing education. You get into specifically what you want to do, and not just the PT feed of everything, you know, being drinking from the fire hose type of thing. And so and especially kind of the athlete aspect with the women's health, I think some very invaluable information was learned here. So I've had a back injury for the past year, and I was doing CrossFit powerlifting, and I could squat pretty heavy, and so I've avoided really doing that for the past year, a lot of out of fear. And we completely changed the way that I was squatting, and I lifted more than I have in the past year, and felt completely zero pain with my squat.
Including a pause squat that was painful?
Yes, so we did a pause squat at 95 pounds, and it was painful. I was very wide stance, externally rotated, pushing my knees out. We sussed and pulled me in, a lot narrow stance, took away, kind of pushing my knees out, changing my core, kind of how I'm stable. It was over-stabilizing, and it felt amazing.
And no pain.
No pain, and it's just like,
and the speed of your squat too, right? How did
Yeah.
the speed go?
Speed was awesome. It just felt like very little weight, and which is a lot of weight for me right now, I know, based on not being able to do this for the last 6 months to a year.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So it's just a culmination of all the things that we taught on the course, and it applies into any sort of lift.
It does, yes. I saw it today with multiple lifts, and been hoping to apply it to everything else that I want to do and get back into, and not be as fearful to do things as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I thought it was great. Yeah. It was very informational. I felt like I could apply it to my practice right away, which is awesome. And it actually felt like I learned a lot of stuff just for myself personally, but also I think for me the most important thing taking to my practice is starting to be, continue to be challenging with my patients, but be a bit more challenging and still working in the philosophy that I believe as a PT, getting people to challenge themselves a little bit more so that they can see themselves that they can do it, and I don't even have to verbally tell them they can do it, they actually can see the results right away. If you're thinking about taking the course, I definitely would get on board. I think maybe the title of the female athlete may make people think, well, if I don't work with somebody directly in CrossFit, or I don't work with a gymnast, it's probably not a course for me, but I would disagree. I would say that it's applicable in the ortho setting, women's health setting, specific to CrossFit setting, specific to gymnastics, and it's actually for women who are just getting back into exercise even postpartum. So we can all potentially be athletes, and so we discuss those principles a little bit, of course.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Oh, I thought it was awesome. I think it's quite innovative and really pushing the mold on a lot of issues that I think really need to be talked about in both the fitness and physical therapy professions, and couldn't have been happier with it. There's no such thing as bad form. I think that we put too much stock in what's ideal and what's perfect and how people move, and really we want to give them variety in how they move, and that's really a good take home for me. Absolutely, don't hesitate. It's a really nice mix of material for anyone from the fitness to the sports enthusiast to people who work with really low-level clients who might have a lot of pain, to people who are super high-performing athletes. Super appropriate for men, even though it says it's a pelvic floor type of course. Absolutely sign up for it, men. And super appropriate for women's health specialists, even if you don't work with athletes, because it really gives you a nice holistic appreciation for everything.
Yeah, so it's been great to see it 2 different times and really pay attention to what you're explaining and the principles behind it. I think the 2 things that really stick out to me that make a huge difference are, number 1, everything you present is research evidence-based. So it's all the information that we know between pain science, the latest on women's health, pelvic health, and you incorporate it into your course and all of your principles throughout. So it makes it really nice that you already took care of all the science and we don't have to worry that this isn't the latest information. So that's huge. Another thing I like is that you bust many of the myths that we think and know. So for example, a perfect example is we hear never do a plank, or we hear crunches are awful. If you have pelvic organ prolapse, if you have incontinence, you should never, ever, ever do a plank or a crunch. And we don't necessarily say why, we just say don't ever do it. And I think you explain in a very nice way that really there's not necessarily one bad movement. It's finding movements that work for people and explaining if you do a crunch or you do any kind of other exercise, why it's not necessarily the worst thing. And you explain that very, very well. Well, it's interesting. You talk a lot about scaling exercises and how you can change things to modify for people. And I think you actually do that quite well in terms of scaling for your audience. So I see that when you were more with a trainer type of group, you were able to scale that more for them and their needs. And then I see when it was more heavy-based pelvic physical therapists and women's health specialists, you also added extra things for that population as well and a different type of education. But in the end, it's all the really same great information. It's just you're able to scale it very nicely and meet them where they are. And the other thing I actually really love is that you took, there are pelvic health therapists out there who have never seen CrossFit, who have never been exposed to this kind of training before. And I think there are a lot of myths busted about that as well, in terms of it being scary or intimidating or maybe harmful to patients or clients, when they realize, no, actually, if you do it safely and you scale these exercises, they can work out really well for anyone and at any population, in terms of age, any kind of demographic, it works really well with no matter what they have. And the other thing for trainers is I don't think they understood a lot of the science behind pelvic organ prolapse, pain, pelvic pain, all sorts of things that we discussed in terms of the medical aspects. And you were able to bridge that gap as well and help them understand how when they're training or exercising themselves, what to look for and the right things to help answer questions that can be tough. If a client says, I have pelvic organ prolapse, what can I do? You provide some really great, solid information for them as well. I don't know what you mean by differently, but I will say that I like the fact that you break it into different things. So we had a whole section on squats. And you assess it from even the supine and then show how you can move that into different levels, to the point where they're doing squats, to the point where they're squatting and then jumping onto a box. So I really like how you sequence things in that way. And I also like how you start out with someone just doing a movement, and then you say, okay, now apply the principles you talk about in the class, and now how does that feel different for you? So you sequence in the way that you first start out with nothing, and then you start giving them cues to sequence them to be able to do that better. So I like there's a lot of that practical, and it's from everything from when we were doing warm-ups to jumping and running to actually doing squats and then even doing deadlifts and other exercises with weights. So we had many different practicals that you could do that were incorporating all different movements. I think the biggest thing is scaling, and I have some patients who are higher level. So for example, they are doing CrossFit already, or they're runners, and they say that they're leaking every time they jump, for example, a box jump. And I think it's really important to say, instead of saying don't ever do that, we tell that to people a lot. We'll say, you know what, if that's bothering you, it's the one thing that you're leaking, just stop doing it. And the take home is that I've learned many different ways that I can scale that, from changing what they're doing, from doing things with them outside of jumping on the box, but then bringing them back to a box to jump and really understanding how to scale that. I think that's really important, probably one of the best practical things I know immediately would benefit many of my patients. Yeah, and I really honestly think everyone should take this class. I think that we start to see things on such a low level sometimes, we don't realize how we can really scale things. And many of us are afraid to go to that next level with patients and clients. So I highly, highly recommend this as a class that should be standard that everyone should be taking.